Okay, so we're live on Facebook and everything's good here. So thank you everyone who has joined us, and sorry about the time confusion. I didn't clarify, and so we got a little bit off on that. But this is our final presentation for the virtual Double D tour. We took it virtual this year just because of COVID and Forest Service staffing constraints too. So if you want to see any of the other presentations and if you missed them, those are on Facebook that you can see them. You can see the Amelia presentation for 2 more weeks, and then you can see the others whenever you want. And so they'll be on there for your viewing convenience. And I'll turn it over to you, Russell, and I'll pull up your photographs and then you can get started. Does that work, Russell?
Should I be able to hear you, Amy?
Yeah, you should be. Just
I'm not hearing you. You hear me? Okay. Oh, yeah, there it is. Go ahead, D.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
on normal, but for some reason didn't work. All right, you tell me when are you ready for us, or?
Yep, it's all you.
Okay, well, thank you, Amy. I'm sorry about my forgetting about daylight savings and the absence of it in Arizona. We're looking at one of my favorite pictures, which is the Eaton's family in front of what they called Custer Trail Ranch, which was actually in the Dakota Territories. And we say Wyoming gets credit for the first dude ranch, but it's really a Wyoming dude ranch now, Eaton's, that was started and as a cattle ranch in the Dakota Territory and took their first paying guest in 1892. And some people like to say, well, I've even read that Kit Carson was the first dude rancher because he received payment to take people into the wilderness. Well, that's really not dude ranching. Dude ranching is a ranch, whether it was a cattle ranch or a purpose-built ranch, and they take in guests, and then the guests at some level either experience, help, or observe the workings of a real ranch. And so that's how it got started in the Dakotas. The Eatons, Howard was the lead brother, and he went out and in the 1870s and then came back and started bought a little property and started a cattle ranch. They called it Custer Trail Ranch. I've heard different explanations, either the trail to the Bighorn went through, or the Custer group camped on the property. But in any case, it was on the way and to the Little Bighorn. And so they called it Custer Trail. They were raising cattle and horses, and they got hit early on by a terrible blizzard, lost more cattle, half of them, than they did horses percentage-wise. But they kept on going. His brothers Alden and Willis eventually came, and they were near Teddy Roosevelt's ranch, the Maltese Cross. And Teddy Roosevelt, of course, had a lot of friends and family from the East, and they had money. And of course, it was only people with money and time that could come out west and take these long, expensive journeys and and be away for all that time. So a lot of his friends and family would come out, and sometimes Teddy wouldn't be there, and they kind of made their way over to the Eatons because it was fairly nearby. And they started staying for long periods of time. Some of them would stay for the whole summer. And after a little while, they determined that they were going to eat the Eatons out of house and ranch. And so they went to the Eatons and said, we'd like to pay to be here. And the Eatons were steeped in the Western tradition of, anybody who comes is welcome and they're our guests. And said, no, we can't do that. It's not the ethic. And so they finally talked him into it. And so the first guest signed in 1892 at the Custer Trail Ranch. And then the Eatons, for a variety of reasons, land sort of being taken up by farming and some other things, and a nice offer to sell, they moved to where they are now, which is Eaton's Ranch, which is being operated by the 5th generation. So that's where it all started, that kind of rugged looking picture. I think our next picture has the Eaton brothers. And there's Howard, Alden, and Willis. And I love that they're in the ties, always well dressed. And they were from Pittsburgh, but they became the real deal and started what today, as I mentioned earlier, there's arguments that there might have been a dude ranch in Colorado early and here and there, and who was a dude rancher, who wasn't. But these were the ones who made it happen. And one of the famous dude ranchers later, and his name's just jumped out of my head, but he wrote a book, Diary of a Dude Wrangler, said that if not for the Eatons, he's not convinced that dude ranching would have taken hold and really been what, something that ended up having a pretty big impact on much of the rural West, as both directly in terms of employing people, and then also bringing all these people early on, the elite and the wealthy, who some, ended up moving out west or marrying, and much like the Eatons, stayed and made a real contribution and changed the West in many, many ways. In fact, also most dude ranches, almost all dude ranches that were successful, either they had some sort of Eastern connection. So either like the Waltons or the Eatons, where they came out from the East and had all those connections to Pennsylvania, or they had partnerships or people involved who came out and partnered maybe with a generational Westerner. But there was almost always an Eastern connection, and that was often the conduit to bring the people that ultimately became known as dudes. And if you look it up, there's a lot of stories on where did the dude description come from. Howard always said, I coined that term. He said they came out, these Easterners all duded up, and I just took to calling them dudes. And that's my favorite story. I prefer to think that Howard coined the term. There was also dudines for a while, sort of the heyday of dude ranching, 40s and 50s. The kids were dudettes, and those terms have lost into history now. And of course, thank you. Struthersburg was the writer of Diary of a Dude Rancher, and had a lot to say about Howard, particularly Howard Eaton. And of course, there's Howard Eaton Trail up in Yellowstone, and that ranch and that family has had such a lasting and important impact on Wyoming in general. So to the next photo, I think. so of course this photo comes with its own caption, and of course Wolf, Wyoming is the location of where the ranch is today, and where they moved very, very early 1900s. They've been in Wyoming well over 100 years now. And the early days of dude ranching just overlapped tremendously with all the jobs that cattle ranches were built around. And riding broncs, something that really doesn't go on much anymore anywhere. You know, horses are gentle, trained, broken in a variety of ways. It doesn't involve just saddling a horse and seeing if you can ride him longer than he can buck. But that was definitely the way it was, turn of the century, late 1800s. And so Eaton's, which remains a very real and viable cattle outfit, that was the roots. And of course, that was one of the things that really drew these privileged Easterners and Midwestern dudes to come out, and maybe they weren't going to go ride that bronc, but it was sure going to be fun to go watch that cowboy ride that bronc. And so Eaton's Ranch, very, very authentic place. So next. And Eaton's, you know, I finally got there fairly recently, and so for a lifetime dude rancher as I am, it was I say, and I don't say that lightly, I say it was like a pilgrimage. And I got to spend time with Karen Ferguson, who tragically we lost recently, and Bill and several of the family, and it just such a, of course, in the early 1900s, they could pick anywhere they wanted to be. I'm talking about the Eatons. So they went all around, and they found this very special spot that fit the needs. They wanted to be high enough to have nice summers. They didn't want to be too high to be suffering miserable winters. They wanted obviously live water. They wanted good cattle country and good riding, of course, because riding is such a core experience for the guests, dudes. And so they found it. And of course, it's become a pretty big facility. They take a lot more dudes, guests, than most dude ranches. They still let people go out and ride on their own without wranglers, and you know, because they just know, and they have so much experience and such a culture that works, that they're able to do some things that most ranches can't even conceive of doing. When you're there, you feel the history, and you just, you know, everything is nice and everything is well maintained, but they're not trying to make a mountain resort. They're carrying on the traditions of their family without putting it in your face. So it's a tremendous experience, and you can see over 120 years roughly how much has been created there. So on. And of course, this is just it's just a postcard photo, really. It's just a different perspective on that significant facility. They've got the big old stone house and all the cabins and outbuildings all around. Of course, the river going through. Next photo. And so we're on to Charles Moore, new ranch, CM Ranch, Charles Moore, and he just I've lost my spot, but anyway, Charles Moore came in, and CM Ranch is one of the ranches, Wyoming, like most states, Arizona being one of them. A lot of the ranches have gone away. In Arizona, it's often because of development. They get paved over, or they lose their ability to have riding and the experience that a dude ranch is built around. But CM Ranch is one of those that is hung on very, very well to their traditions. And this is the founder, Charles Moore. And I have to sometimes remember he was in the University of Michigan law school and became a lawyer. Actually performed in the Buffalo Bill Wild West as it traveled around, and that got him hooked on the West, and he came out and started CM Ranch. Next photo, please. I love these kind of photos because we still aspire to have that experience for our guests at dude ranches. We got the chuck wagon and the guests just having that experience that dude ranches only they can really produce. Get the food out into the wilderness where there's nothing else around, and of course everybody agrees food tastes best outdoors, and so this would be a scene that might not be all that different today at the CM Ranch. So anyway, next shot. And I believe this is, is one of the postcard photos. And this is a photo that involved a pack trip, and they went to no, this is just a camping trip, but they're on the way up to the glaciers, and of course they have very much the same type of experiences today in pack trips where they would go on up and go into places that there'd be no other way to do, either riding a horse or on a pack trip or hiking in. He also, yes, thank you. He also did trips into Yellowstone with a lot of kids. And then this is Charles Moore. He married Marion Laidlaw in May of 1927. And she was a city girl from Minneapolis, and she was initially pretty concerned about being able to pull her weight out on the ranch, but as it worked out, she was able to do it as well as anybody. She dude rancher. I always think, sometimes people think that to be successful in this business, you have to be generational. I think often it's all a mindset. We're Westerners at heart or not. So anyway, next shot, please. Of course, new ranch, Triangle X, got that. I think there's probably no more beautiful view than the Tetons. I like the view I'm looking at. Our mountains rise up from the flat ground, kind of like the Tetons do, but it's kind of hard to beat the Tetons. Triangle X Ranch, also generational. It's within the national park and has been for a very long time. Same family has owned it from beginning to end, and well, not the end, beginning to the future. The Turner family and Harold Turner, Donald and John, three brothers in their generation, and their kids all share operating it now. Donald's gone. John has had a big job in the Bush administration in Washington, and so also in the state legislature of Wyoming. So and Harold has worked tirelessly on behalf of outfitting and the West. And so these folks have had an impact on Wyoming and the West far larger than you might assume a dude ranch family would. So anyway, you just see early days, the rides. One of the things that's, I think, very different about dude ranching today than yesterday, yesterday meaning back years and years ago, even 50 years ago when I started, is that if you had 30 people riding, you'd probably put 30 people on horses and send them out. You have 30 people today, that might be 3, 4, 5 groups of people all heading out in different groups. That big group style is definitely no longer the case. Anyway, next photo, please. And this is Louise Turner, and she's got Harold Turner on her back, and of course I know Harold as an adult and have been privileged and honored to spend time with him, and but that was a long time ago. But his mother Louise was a legend in her own. I never had the privilege of knowing her, but well-known, respected rancher, and when you're doing it in that Jackson area, especially if you're there in the winter, you better be tough and you better find ways to make it all work. And so she's snowshoeing him around with a papoose arrangement on his back. Anyway, next photo, please. This another, they weren't operating with guests in the winter, but Triangle X, the Turners lived there, and one of the ways they got to town was with a sleigh, and then they get they get the sleigh down to Moose, and then they'd shovel their ranch vehicle out of the snow, and they had put a fire under the engine to get it started, and then they'd head on in. So they've experienced challenge, at least I'll say. So next photo, please. And of course, any of these historic dude ranches, well, not all of them, but most of them, they're going to have that cattle ranch genesis. And Triangle X is, these are cowboys as well as dude ranch hosts, and so they've got the branding going on there, and you can see that it's just running like any other cattle ranch. And of course the guests, they're going to have varied interests in participating. Some are going to want to put that iron on, and others are just going to be put off by the smell of burning hair, and they're going to want to be somewhere else, maybe a little farther away. But anyway, again, great photo of the beginnings, and now we're on to again, not dude time of the year, but this is this is Triangle X in the winter, and there's a great shot of the family and the Tetons behind. Hard for me to imagine down here in Arizona. Anyway, great photo. Next shot. So on to a new ranch, Red Rock Ranch, and currently run by and owned by the McKenzie family. Here is Jesse Buchanan, and let me see. Yeah, Jesse's on the left. But anyway, again, it's we've got them on snowshoes, and they've got their gun, and it's wintertime. The dudes aren't there, but they are, and so Red Rock also is one of the ranches in Wyoming where you could go and stay today. Next photo, please. So this is Fernie Hubbard and, well, it's Bill and Ida's daughter, Dorothy. And this is a 1937 photograph. And she's got her tapaderos on her saddle, and she's riding the little pony out all the way back in 1937. Next photo, please. So this is just a shot of Red Rock Ranch. This is sorry, this shot was taken about 1920, and the Redmond family that had Red Rock. Next photo, please. So this is a 1943 photo. Eugene Meyer, at the time owning the ranch, he was going to sell it, and the new owner was Major Mosley, and was a World War I pilot, and Mosley owned it until the 70s when health forced him to sell it, and the McKenzie family bought it, and they still have it there. Red Rock Ranch. Next, please. Next photo, please. So this is kind of a little bit of a pixelated shot, but it's a beautiful shot. It's from a brochure, and the photo was called A Quiet Moment. This is Paradise Ranch, and it was founded well over 100 years ago. I believe they were founded in 1901 or 1902. And anyway, the folks that were coming in said this is paradise, and so the name just stuck. Next photo, please. So in 2006, Gordon Meldrum married Mabel Lee, and she's been described as having endless energy, charisma, and strength, and the love of the outdoors. Her brothers also got involved as wranglers on the ranch, and her husband died in 1911, and she took on running the ranch alone, and did for a very long time, and actually made Paradise one of the bigger and more successful ranches over time. Next photo.
Sorry, Russell, there's a little bit of a lag when I click next from when it actually goes.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thanks. Again, a Paradise photo, sort of dates itself with the car and the clothing, and just quote a brochure from Paradise. Although in the wilds, all the comforts of home are to be had at Paradise Ranch. Comfortable accommodations for about 40 guests in the modern log cabins. Many of the cabins are heated. Ample bathing facilities with running hot and cold water are provided. So this is a 1915 photo, and it's a Glidden touring machine, and it was the first automobile to cross the Bighorn Mountains, and they're pleased with themselves. The caption says, for having made the journey. But again, Paradise is still operating, and one of the just really well thought of ranches out west, including, of course, in Wyoming. Next photo, please. So here's Mabel again. You gotta love I mean, these photos, some of them. She's got her deer packed on the horse, and she's still wearing a skirt, and she's got her gun and her belt full of cartridges. And anyway, she ran the ranch until 1926 when she sold it. So gives you a pretty good sense of these dude ranchers were real cowboys and cowgirls. And this a photo of that was taken from a brochure, and it just, you can read it yourself. Dudes are frequent visitors at the teepee villages of the Crow Indians and the Cheyenne Indian reservations. Friendly neighbors of the Bighorn ranches. So early days of dude ranching, little different in some regards. So next photo, please. So this is the Sparrow Wigwam. And one of the things Sparrow Wigwam is known for, it's up on the top of the Bighorn Mountains, is a couple of things. Is Ernest Hemingway finished a call to arms there, and their very uniquely designed main lodge. And so we're seeing them doing some of the log construction on what became and is, the ranch just went back into operation this summer, Sparrow Wigwam. So anyway, this is a photo of that construction. Next photo, please. And here's the main lodge, and you know, it's set up to have that unique shape, and everything comes off that center pole. And I've been in it's supposed to look like a wigwam, and then a spear. The dining room is long and narrow and comes off of it, and then so Sparrow Wigwam relates to the name, but it really is an impressive structure, and you can see someone showing off in the photo. Next picture, please. And you know, they're doing some washing, but you can see further along now that log, Sparrow Wigwam main lodge, and complete now, obviously, in that photo. All right, next photo. And of course, it's a small photo, but there's Ernest Hemingway with his catch. If you go to Sparrow Wigwam today, you can, if you're lucky enough, you can reserve his cabin, his beautiful cabin, because there's a little brook going along behind it. You can both see it and hear it through the back window. And so they were going to, of course, with things the way they are now, but they were going to have a Hemingway festival up there in Sheridan this summer. I think it was canceled, but Hemingway had a big presence in that Bighorn Sheridan area. So next photo, please. So in this photo, C. Jack Rhodes Sr. is rescuing a Hereford calf. I don't know if you can see it from where you are, but he's got a calf he's got on horseback, and you can see there's nothing but snow all around him. These photos, the next few photos, are from Pitchfork Ranch, and what is most interesting, I think, or what separates the ranch and the book a little bit, is the Charles Belden photography. And Charles Belden was, in his era, a very famous photographer. And some of his photographs are still iconic. And he was related to the family that had the pitchfork. And this is just a great photo of a cowboy fighting the cold with a baby calf that needs rescuing with a horse going up a snow-covered hill. Quite a photo. Next photo, please. And of course, probably most of us have seen this photo. Again, Charles Belden photograph, and I mean, what could I say that the photo doesn't? Just an incredible photograph. Next photograph, please. And, you know, I mean, the subject matter isn't unusual in this. Again, Pitchfork Ranch, Charles Belden photography, but, you know, the way he's lit it, the way he's set it up and composed it makes it not just the story, but a real piece of art there again at the Pitchfork Ranch. Go ahead. And we're back in my book. I talk about two firsts, and we're going to credit Wyoming with the first dude ranch, Eaton's, because that's where they rested and where dude ranching really took hold and became what it is. But the other first was Larry Laram, and Larry Laram became the first president of the Dude Ranchers Association. He was, I forget how long he was president. It was a long time. We're all limited to 2 years. I was president 2 different times, and always just sort of felt truly, since I'm a dude rancher, to be honored to have had the same job as a real giant, Larry Laram. So these are some kids at Valley Ranch. Valley Ranch is not an operating dude ranch anymore. It's privately held. And Larry Laram had and we'll talk about it as the photos go through, but was very big on kids. All dude ranches are, but he was so dedicated to youth, he started a school. So anyway, great to see the kids in and they all look pretty serious, but they're dressed up for their dude ranch experience. Next photo, please. So we've got, if you go back to the historic term, we've got a bunch of dudines, and you can see why Howard Eaton said they all come duded up, and I call them dudes. Those are some pretty elaborately dressed cowgirls. So all at Valley Ranch. Next photo, please. We're back to the Eatons. I thought we had some more. Well, I'll talk a little more about it. Can you back up? We'll go back to Howard or Larry Laram. I don't know if you can back it up. But talk about Larry Laram real quick. He was going to Princeton University, and his family also from the East. And so he traveled out to what was called then Valley Home Ranch, and he rode the train like everybody had to back then. And they let him off at the stop, and there's nobody there, nothing there but a water tower and a little shack. And so eventually they come and get him on horseback, and he rides into Valley Home Ranch and had this, as it works out, life-changing experience. And so he gets his buddy, who was part of the Brooks Brothers family, and they came out and stayed at the ranch and got really hooked on it. And so eventually they bought Valley Home Ranch, shortened the name to Valley Ranch. Larry Laram was such Winthrop Brooks. I'm sorry, I didn't say the name. Winthrop Brooks, the Brooks Brothers. In fact, there was always a connection between Valley Ranch and Brooks Brothers. They had a permanent office in New York City in the Brooks Brothers shop there. So in any case, Larry Laram became such a prominent person out there that he was actually offered head of the Park Service, and he turned it down. I read that later regretted it. He never was offered that opportunity again. But anyway, Larry Laram kept dude ranching, I believe, till the 60s. So that's kind of my presentation. Amy, I think you said that if there's time, I don't know if there is, given our challenges. I'm plenty happy to do questions.
Yes, we have several questions. The first being, what's the difference between outfitting and dude ranching, or is there a difference?
Well, I would say yes and no, there is a difference. So yes, there's a difference in the sense that an outfitter could be doing tremendous outfitting and not have a physical plant, a ranch. So they could have horses, pack equipment, tents, and all the equipment that's needed to do a pack trip. These are, nobody goes into pack trip business if they know what they're doing. Without knowing they're in for a big job and a real challenge. And I'm not a packer. And every time I hear a pack trip story, I'm reminded why I'm not a packer. But so you could be an outfitter and be doing pack trips or outfitting hunters or taking people into the wilderness on horseback, muleback, packing in equipment, supplies, et cetera, and never have a ranch or you just have a permit into public land or wherever you're going. So that wouldn't make you a dude rancher, but a lot of dude ranchers maintain pack outfits and do outfit people either for hunting or for recreational pack trips. And so those two activities often overlap.
And how many dude ranches are in Wyoming? I'm not sure if they're asking for currently or historically, but where are they in the state? Are they mostly around mountains or mostly north?
Well, they are spread around Wyoming quite a bit, and I don't. I'm not sure if anybody could rattle off a number. I live in Arizona, and if you ask me how many dude ranches are in Arizona, I'd say, well, 13 to 15 or 16, and you'd say, well, why don't you know? And I'd say because it's sometimes hard to define a dude ranch, and you want to get an argument going with dude ranchers, define what a dude ranch is and what isn't a dude ranch. And so I would say in Wyoming, I'm going to say there's 35 to 55 operating dude ranches. In research for this book, much like Arizona, I mean, if you go back to in Wyoming a little earlier, 30s, 40s, 50s. I think if you count a dude ranch, whether it exists or when it existed, I bet you Wyoming has well over 300 in its history, maybe as many as 400. It was hard. I mean, there's a lot of lists that were pretty long, well over 100 at one given time, particularly in the heyday of 40s and 50s.
And since businesses today have to be concerned with liability, do dude ranches have any safety or liability concerns about the guests and if they have injuries and stuff like that?
Well, yeah, they do. We always say here to our wranglers, we say a lot of things to our wranglers, but we say that, worry about the guests' safety and everything else will take care of itself. Anybody's ever ridden a horse that more than 3 times knows that it doesn't matter how gentle, kind, or dependable that horse is, there is an unpredictable component. And so anybody who rides more than a few times is probably going to come off. And so are people going to come off horses? Absolutely. And particularly in places like Wyoming that have some really big country and some really isolated remote riding, they might come off up on top of a mountain somewhere. But these ranches are versed and experienced and knowledgeable at getting people down and getting people through these unbelievable experiences. I'm talking about the beauty and you can't get to these places really very easily in any other way. than horseback. And they get them up there and get them back down safely. We all think about it. We all work on it. But Wyoming, like most states, has laws that, specifically equine law, that acknowledges that equines, which includes mules, have an inherent risk. They have their own mind, and sometimes it malfunctions. And so bad things can happen that are outside the controllable for dude ranchers. And so we're all focused on it. We all talk about it. We all work on it. It comes down to horse system, equipment, and but we don't worry about it because we're doing our job right. We've done everything we can to make it right.
And then historically, were the guests or dudes mostly single? Were they couples? Were they families? What was kind of what was seen most often?
Well, I mean, if we go back, if we go back to the early days, turn of the century, so Eaton's days, Paradise Ranch, HF Bar is another tremendous historic ranch in Wyoming. And some of these ranches are really cutting the trail for the rest of them that started coming out in the 20s and 30s and 40s. As I already mentioned, they were the elite. They were the wealthy. They were the people who could take the time, had the money, and also had the mindset to make these long train journeys to where they would get picked up on wagons or horseback or stagecoaches. I mean, that's how they got there. I mean, they, obviously no airplanes. And some of these dude ranches predated any real use of the automobile. So they started out as wealthy singles, couples, and families, as that picture that's up there. That's not 1940. I mean, that's probably the 30s and 40s maybe. But dude ranching has become much more egalitarian. I mean, almost everybody goes to dude ranches now. And women love horses, so there's that connection. So you see a lot of women that travel alone, either leave their husband at home or travel with groups of women. And of course, families are always going to be the core of dude ranching, because people who've experienced it or understand it, they want their kids to have this very real, non-virtual, freedom-based experience. You can send your kids out on a ride and go sit by the pool or read a book on your cabin porch. And so it's a great family experience, but I would say now, it's everybody and international too. I mean, not at the moment, but international. Our ranch here at this time of year, we'd normally be 60, 70% non-American.
Historically, were the, like around the turn of the century, were the dude ranches seeing foreign tourists, or was it mostly Americans going to dude ranches?
Well, it was mostly Americans, but there were, I read a book a little while ago, and it wasn't about dude ranching. I had one dude ranching. It was called A Gallery of Dudes. And it was, except for Teddy Roosevelt, it was all Europeans, including Russian people who were prominent, wealthy people who came out and experienced the West. Late 1800s, the book was set, but there were certainly people, England, UK, Germany, huge fascination with the West. And so we have a dude ranch outside Tombstone. It was homesteaded by German immigrants in 1880. So a lot of English, a lot of Germans did come, some of them earlier than dude ranching even.
Was dude ranching only an American phenomenon, or are there dude ranches, and were there dude ranches in like Mexico, Argentina, or other areas where they have ranches?
So again, I'm going to give you a vague answer. I'm going to say it's an American invention in the sense that I think that the Eatons and others took Western ranching as we know it today and knew it then. It really hasn't in some ways changed all that much. And it just naturally occurred that friends and family became dudes and ultimately paying guests. Could this, it almost certainly did it happen in Mexico? Sure, Mexicans have been ranching 350 years. Americans, US has been ranching in the way we think of it 150 years. So did guests pay? Did the elite go? I'm sure they did. But I don't know history of dude ranching really taking hold and becoming, I always laugh, an industry. We're not really, we're a business segment, but I kind of doubt that it ever really took hold elsewhere. There are dude ranches all over now. I mean, there are Mexican dude ranches. There's some in South America. They're in Europe. One of our guys that worked for us went back and started his own ranch in Croatia and runs it much like an American dude ranch with some differences. So I think America should be considered the birthplace of dude ranching as we know
it. Did the dude ranches offer hunting?
Often, yes. Yes, very often. Even down here in Arizona, when I did my Arizona book, because you don't really, I don't know of any dude ranches in Arizona that even offer hunting anymore. I was surprised by how many did. But yes, the dude ranches did. It was a big part of it. And of course, hunting is much more regulated today, but several of the ranches offer hunting trips and guide people. And, I mean, no one better than a good dude rancher to take you out hunting because they're going to take care of the hospitality, get you your trophy and make it all work.
So did dude ranching contribute to the popularity of the Western movie genre, or did the Western movie genre contribute to more dude ranches on the landscape?
Well, I don't know the answer to that, but I think, unfortunately, it's the second. I think Hollywood, I know Hollywood had a huge impact on the interest in dude ranching. And I'm talking about with, Roy Rogers and John Wayne and Alan Ladd and Clint Eastwood later, and, City Slickers in whatever that was, the 90s, had a bigger impact in my lifetime than any single event ever on dude ranching. The power of Hollywood is hard to even begin to comprehend. I can tell you in specific instances, particularly in Arizona, dude ranches would attract celebrities and movie makers. And a ranch in Arizona, Zane Grey wrote books, and Tom Mix stayed and made movies, and Dane Coolidge wrote books. So dude ranches definitely inspired books, inspired movies. I mean, Will James and Rogers Reinhardt at Eaton's, and there's celebrity connections in the early days to almost any dude ranch. I mean, in Arizona alone, there have been 5 presidents stayed at dude ranches, and Teddy Roosevelt. I always say Teddy Roosevelt was affected. He indirectly created dude ranching, and dude ranchers changed Teddy Roosevelt's life. And I say that because Howard Eaton wrote a letter back to family or friends in the East, and it was published in a New York paper. Teddy Roosevelt read the letter and came out west and went to the Dakota territories to see what Howard was talking about. And then, of course, later wrote many times, Teddy Roosevelt, that the West had changed his life and impacted him greatly. And of course, indirectly, his friends and family ended up staying at the Eaton's Ranch, which indirectly caused dude ranching to be created. So yes, there's a lot of interaction. I think Hollywood really put dude ranching forward.
And kind of going along with the idea of vacations now, people are starting to look for experiential vacations quite often. They want to get away from technology and all of that. Does this bode well for remaining dude ranches, or what do you kind of see going on there?
So, I read the trade journals. I'm an active dude rancher. I'm involved. This is how our family makes its living. And so we've been hearing just that for years and years now. And when I say years and years, I'm going to say 15 years at least. It's all about authenticity. It's about experiential. It's about adventure. Those are the three big words, right? Authentic, real, whichever one. Adventure and experiential, probably in reverse order. And we really didn't see any direct. We didn't feel direct consequence of that concept. Dude ranching for us typically follows the economy, and good economy, people spend money and they travel, and because dude ranch vacations are generally full package, so you're getting your whole experience in one price. Sometimes there's a little sticker shock there, but I think that it was really starting in this last year or two. I think the experiential, the realness, the unplugged, whether you're unplugged or not, I mean, you can feel unplugged and get away and not be on your cell phone and your laptop all the time. I'll tell you what I think right now is going to be a real flip of the switch and a game change for dude ranching is now the uncrowded, out of the way, outdoor, nature-based. I can't say that enough. I think with the world as it is right now, I think a lot of people just want to get out, get away, and get back into nature, where they feel safer, calmer, happier, and I think it's going to have a huge impact on dude ranching.
Awesome. And I think this is going to be our last question. I don't see any others, but if you're watching and you have questions, you can ask those on Facebook, or here on Zoom, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. But last question, and I have to double check, make sure. Are there lists for people who are looking for like operational dude ranches? Are there lists that kind of where it's all in one place where they can find that information?
You mean if they're looking to go to a dude ranch?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. So there's a great source. It's one-stop shopping, as long as you want to stay in the American West, and it's the Dude Ranchers Association, duderanch.org, O-R-G, not the other one, O-R-G. And it about 100 ranches from Wyoming to Arizona to California to Oregon. And these are ranches that have gone through a 2-year vetting process through the association. They could be little, very authentic cattle ranches in the middle of nowhere where they're just taking a few guests and sharing their cattle or livestock experience with their guests, to some pretty, elaborate resort aspect, but still authentic dude ranches. The resorts can't be a member of the Dude Ranch Association. So it is really a great place to start. And they have a great website, and it'll help you search, and you can call and talk to Bryce or Josie, and they will guide you through the process if you need that help. The website will probably do it for you.
Awesome. Great. I think that's it for us. There's no more questions. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm so sorry about the time zone confusion and the technical difficulties. But thank you. And everybody, if you could please fill out the survey. If you're on Facebook, it's going to be in the comment section. If you're watching here on Zoom, it'll be there as soon as you exit Zoom, it'll pop up. So those really help us out when we're designing programming and things like that, especially with COVID when it's all new to us. So thank you so much again, Russell. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you.
Yeah.